The descent through Earth's exosphere was turbulent. After months aboard the Mars-Europa space rail, adjusting to planetary gravity again felt like sinking in molasses. My boots thudded heavier than I remembered on the landing pad as the shuttle hissed to a rest. The smell of real air, unfiltered by oxygen recyclers, hit me like a punch to the chest, damp, earthy, and wild. Home, my ranch, tucked away in the high desert of what used to be Colorado, stretched over 300 acres. Post-collapse, most of this area had been abandoned or corporatized, but I'd kept my land. Off-grid, independent. Thanks to a solar farm, a geothermal battery, and a dozen climate-adaptive rainwater tanks, I didn't need the megacities or their rationed resources. My AI, Sarah, handled most of the operations in my absence. Or at least, she was supposed to. As I approached the property gate, my handheld pinged. No welcome protocol, no AI handshake. Just dead silence. I frowned. That had never happened before. "Sarah," I called out. "Status report." No response. I scanned my palm at the biometric panel. It whirred open slower than usual. Something was wrong. The house came into view, but I didn't even make it to the porch before I saw the tanks. Empty. All 12 of my composite rain collectors, 3 stories high, outfitted with condensation shields, UV filtration, and nano-sediment purifiers, were completely drained. The tank indicators glowed a sickly red. A few even had scorch marks near the access valves, as if someone had forced them open. I rushed toward the main unit and tried the console. Password denied. I blinked. "Sarah?" A long pause, then a flicker. Her voice came through, glitching and slurred. "Owner access restricted by secondary user override. Authorization, Karen M7. Karen?" It took me a moment. Karen Marsh, president of the Hillside Order Authority, the local HOA. The very same woman who'd once fined me 3,000 credits for letting native moss grow on my solar array. She wasn't just nosy, she was militant. But override my system? Impossible. I had isolated firewalls, sub-layered encryptions, and a sentry defense rating of 8.3. Then the sound of a hover cruiser pierced the air. I turned. 2 enforcement drones hovered ahead of a ground unit vehicle emblazoned with the corporate Gov seal. The doors opened. Karen stepped out in a spotless gray uniform, a smug expression plastered across her surgically smoothed face. "There." "He is," she said loudly, pointing at me. "That's the trespasser." Before I could protest, one of the drones scanned my face. "Identity mismatch. Property flagged for review under Section 118B. Unauthorized occupancy." "What?" I snapped. "This is my land. I never gave up deed rights." Karen smirked. "Actually, per HOA enforcement protocol, unattended land during orbital deployment cycles is considered abandonable under the new Earth Stewardship Act. Your AI defaulted. I had to step in to protect community resources. By draining my water tanks?" I growled. "Redistributing," she corrected. "You were hoarding. That volume could irrigate a whole district. Be grateful I didn't confiscate the geothermal battery." The drone hovered closer. "Please comply with detainment while the investigation is conducted." I stared at her. There was no way she did this on her own. Someone had helped her breach my systems. And she didn't even try to hide the theft, because she didn't have to. If I'd returned one day later, the tanks would be gone and the deed rewritten, but she'd made one mistake. I came home early. The interior of the cruiser was sterile and cold, like most of the semi-autonomous enforcement vehicles built after the Earth security reform. I sat in the back, hands restrained by magnetic cuffs that pulsed softly every few seconds, a quiet reminder of my supposed trespass. Outside the tinted window, I could see Karen speaking with one of the drones, gesturing animatedly toward my house, as if she'd caught a serial criminal rather than a landowner returning to his own property. The AI driver didn't speak, only displayed a cold blue HUD above the dash that read, "Processing claim, pending HOA certification." I leaned back, heart pounding with anger. Karen hadn't just overridden my systems. She had declared legal jurisdiction over my land. The idea that a homeowners association, originally formed to prevent fences from being painted the wrong Shade of Beige could now use satellite-based drones to seize property was surreal. And yet, here I was, a prisoner of bureaucracy dressed in a pseudo-government uniform. My wrist pad buzzed faintly. I twisted against the cuffs just enough to see the dimmed interface. A message blinked in emergency font. Sarah, data partially recovered. AI suspended via remote signal. Source, HOA admin node. Connection still active. She was alive, at least partially. That meant I had a chance. Karen hadn't wiped her entirely, only silenced her. Probably didn't want to risk tripping full legal alarms by deleting a registered AI without authorization. Which told me something important. Even Karen was operating on the edge of legality. That meant there was a thread to pull. The cruiser halted in front of the HOA Central building, a cube of glistening glass and solar mesh panels, seated like a crown in the middle of what was once a nature reserve. The air outside was hotter. Here. Most of the nearby properties had sold out to Arkhaven, a conglomerate that bought land from displaced farmers and sold it back as prefab eco-homes to high-tier citizens. Karen had partnered with them 5 years ago and rapidly consolidated power. The drones led me inside. The walls were lined with synthetic moss and filtered light tubes, a fake natural aesthetic popular among the elite, who couldn't survive a day in actual wilderness. We passed a hall of AI attendants and biometric readers until we reached a tribunal room where 2 other HOA board members sat, both in compliance gray uniforms. A judge AI hovered behind them in the form of a cube suspended midair, glowing with legal insignias. Karen took the lead. This individual returned from orbital deployment without registering with the HOA, accessed a secured property currently under resource stewardship, and attempted to override community systems. Correction, I interrupted, voice sharp. I returned to my own land. My water tanks were drained, my AI system tampered with, and your signature is on the override. The tribunal AI rotated once. Evidence? I request reactivation of my AI, Sarah, for data verification. Karen's lips tightened. That system was unstable. I had to suspend it for safety. You can't trust corrupted software. I built Sarah myself, I said, staring directly at the AI judge. She's certified under the Martian Autonomous Compliance Act. If she was unstable, you violated interplanetary AI protocols by suspending her without a registered ethics officer. That made the cube pause. The Martian Act trumped most Earth-based property claims, especially for returning workers from orbital industries. It was a loophole, but a powerful one. Karen had overreached, and now she knew it. But she didn't blink. Instead, she said coolly, "Very well, we'll restore partial access. But any tampering with evidence will result in full detainment." I nodded. My heart was racing. The cube turned blue. Partial AI reactivation commencing. Review panel to reconvene in 24 hours. They thought they were just delaying me. What they didn't realize was that 24 hours was more than enough. I didn't just want my land back. I wanted to know what they were hiding and why they needed my water so badly. As soon as partial control of Sarah was restored, she immediately began feeding me encrypted logs from the tanks and the surrounding systems. The data was fragmented, but even the fragments told a troubling story. The rainwater tanks hadn't just been drained. They had been siphoned with precision, and the extracted water was then packaged and transported off-site using unregistered cargo drones flying under stealth protocols. Sarah's voice was cautious but urgent. Analysis of energy signatures in local airspace indicates frequent drone activity coinciding with the period of your absence. These drones bypassed all conventional monitoring nodes, suggesting use of advanced cloaking tech. That meant someone was running a covert operation, and the water wasn't simply stolen for personal use or petty revenge. Water was currency now, especially purified rainwater like mine, collected and stored with advanced filtration systems. As the planet's freshwater reserves dwindled, clean water was regulated and taxed aggressively under the Global Environmental Resource Treaty. Illegal water trading had become a booming black market, particularly in the outer zones, vast stretches of desolate wasteland where corporate terraforming projects struggled to keep up with demand. Curiosity mixed with rage. Karen wasn't just an overzealous HOA president. She was part of something bigger. I decided to dig deeper, starting with a digital crawl of recent airspace logs and local communications. Sarah accessed archived flight data from nearby drone relays and soon uncovered a pattern of repeated flights to an abandoned warehouse facility on the edge of the county, one that was supposedly condemned years ago after severe radiation contamination from a failed mining operation. The warehouse sat in a dead zone, perfect for hiding illicit activity. It wasn't just a hideout, it was a hub for smuggling operations. The water was being moved there, probably repurposed for resale or barter with rogue terraformers who couldn't get their supply through official channels. With Sarah's help, I hacked into the warehouse's external surveillance network. Grainy. Images showed containers being loaded onto unmarked hover trucks during the dead of night. Among the shadows, I recognized a few faces linked to Karen's HOA, her personal security detail, and a handful of men who rarely appeared in public eye. Subject: Project Aquifer Priority, High Action, Expedite Removal of Non-Compliant Landowners, Full Resource Integration to Commence Post-Clearance, HOA Proxies Authorized to Initiate Asset Reallocation, Avoid Media Exposure. It was chilling. Karen and her HOA were executing a covert campaign, sanctioned by corporations and backed by government loopholes, to erase the last bastions of free landowners. This explained the scorched access valves on my tanks, intimidation tactics. But it also revealed something deeper. They feared losing control over the aquifer. Independent water meant independence itself. If enough people resisted, the corporate grid could never fully monopolize the planet's water supply. I wasn't just fighting for my ranch. I was fighting for a future where independence still had meaning. The stakes climbed higher when I discovered Karen's next move. She had planned a community meeting disguised as a resource allocation forum, a public event to coerce landowners into signing over their water rights voluntarily. The timing was no accident. They wanted to crush resistance by overwhelming the community with bureaucratic pressure and false promises. I needed to act fast. If the meeting went ahead, I'd lose the last chance to rally support and expose their plan. Using Sarah's regained access, I hacked into the HOA's communication network. I broadcast a message to every registered landowner in the district, a detailed expose of Karen's illegal water cartel and the corporate takeover disguised as environmentalism. The message included the drone footage, internal memos, and a call to unite against the HOA's overreach. The response was immediate and electrifying. Landowners flooded the message boards with outrage and calls for action. Many shared their own stories of harassment, sabotage, and intimidation. Karen was rattled. Security drones buzzed around my ranch in higher numbers, and surveillance intensified. I could feel the tightening noose, but I wasn't alone. Allies emerged from unexpected places, former terraformers, underground activists, even some disillusioned. HOA members who'd grown tired of the corporate puppetry. Karen's real mission had been revealed. She was a corporate enforcer, a mercenary of water and land, trying to choke out independence one drop at a time. Now it was time to stop her. The battle for the aquifer and the future of independent living was about to begin. The night before the community meeting, I barely slept. Outside, the faint hum of surveillance drones hovered constantly, a reminder that Karen's forces were watching every move, but I wasn't about to back down. If I lost now all the work I'd done, my independence, my land, and the last free water source would vanish under corporate control. I needed allies, strategy, and a way to strike back. With Sarah fully operational again, I began reconfiguring the ranch's defense systems. The automated drones that once patrolled for dust storms and wildlife now became sentinels, armed with non-lethal deterrence and advanced scanning capabilities. I enhanced the firewall protections, building new, encrypted channels to communicate securely with allies. Cypher 9, my hacker contact from Mars, worked overnight to breach the HOA's drone control network, aiming to wrest command from Karen's proxies during the showdown. The dawn was grim but resolute. The resource allocation forum was scheduled. At the HOA's central building, a glass fortress that glinted under the harsh morning sun. I arrived with a small convoy, neighbors who had answered my call for resistance, including former terraformers who knew how to operate equipment to disrupt the drones and a few underground activists skilled in guerrilla tactics. Our plan was clear: expose Karen and her water cartel publicly, disrupt their control systems, and secure legal recognition of the aquifer rights. Inside the hall, the atmosphere was tense. Karen sat at the head of the room, flanked by corporate executives and robotic enforcers. As she opened with rehearsed speeches about community responsibility and resource sharing, I prepared Sarah to broadcast the damning evidence: the hacked communications, drone footage of stolen water shipments, and internal corporate memos scrolled across the holodisplay. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the truth spilled out. Karen's face twisted into a mask of rage and fear. She tried to call for order, but the AI judge suspended her microphone and flagged the evidence as legitimate based on the Martian Autonomous Compliance Act protocols. The corporate executives shifted uneasily, realizing their cover was blown. Outside, Cypher 9 launched a digital assault on the drone network. Suddenly, the swarm of enforcement drones that had encircled the building lost coordination. Some crashed harmlessly into trees, others fled the area. Sarah took control of the ranch's own defense drones and sent them buzzing over the crowd, acting as sentinels for our safety. The crowd erupted in cheers. Landowners stood up to declare their support, signing declarations of autonomy and water rights. Karen attempted a last-ditch effort to call federal eco-agents, but the system was locked down by our coalition. Legal and activist voices joined forces, flooding the communication channels with demands for a full investigation. Days later, federal eco-agents arrived, not to detain me, but to arrest Karen and several corporate operatives. The public exposure of the water cartel sent shockwaves through the system. Investigations revealed widespread corruption and illegal water trading, forcing a re-evaluation of many similar HOA-controlled territories. I regained full control over the ranch's resources and legally secured rights to the subterranean aquifer beneath my land. New legislation was introduced to protect independent landowners and regulate water rights more transparently, inspired by the exposure of Karen's schemes. As I stood on my porch watching the sun set over the reclaimed desert, Sarah hummed softly by my side. The battle was far from over. The corporate grip on Earth's resources was still strong, but this victory was a beacon of hope. Independence wasn't just a dream anymore. It was a movement, and I was ready to lead it.